reforging of my destiny started with a divine paladin chasing a necromancer. This paladin and his companions had recently enjoyed a string of successes in their battle against the Black Ring, and the pompous fools didn't expect much trouble. They were wrong. The smiles were soon wiped off their smug faces when the necromancer summoned the demon overlord Samuel to his aid. A daring summoning indeed, as Samuel can be notoriously difficult to deal with. But unfortunately for me, in this particular case, the demon proved to be most useful. The divine paladins were no match for Samuel. I hear it took weeks to clean up the mess. However, he did leave one alive. He always leaves one alive. After all, torturing is no fun if the creature is already dead. He imprisoned the last paladin in his citadel, on the demon world of Nemesis, which is where Samuel likes to test out his latest imaginative torture methods on his long-term guests. And that's where I come in. Samuel is a very traditional demon. He takes loyalty very seriously. I belong to a very different camp. Being what I am, I wasn't really afraid when he caught me. After all, what could he do to me that hadn't been done already? Unfortunately, I underestimated him, an almost always fatal mistake when dealing with a demon. Of all the things, he decided to forge my soul to that of his paladin plaything. For a while, I slipped into unconsciousness. When I awoke, I too was in prison. That was easy to rectify, but that didn't solve my real predicament. There was something new inside my head, a burning itch of a presence, and I didn't like the feeling at all. It was time to introduce myself to the itch.
Hello, and welcome to episode 7 of A Pile of Shame, the Backlog Logs, the GOG chapters. Today we're taking a short and painful look at Beyond Divinity. Released in 2004, developed by beloved Larian Studios and published by Hip Interactive and Ubisoft, Beyond Divinity is the second game in the Divinity series that has now become a staple in RPGs, leading Larian to take over the highly acclaimed Baldur's Gate 3. Many of the mechanics I have seen in that game came from the Divinity School of Programming, and it seems to have started all the way back in the very first Divine Divinity. I bought Beyond Divinity in September of 2019, and it sat on the pile for 6 years. I have no previous story with this game. I simply saw the popularity of the Divinity games and was curious to see what was what in the original ones, and I regret that decision. I have played very little of the first game, and during the random selection of the games for this series, Beyond Divinity came up before Divine Divinity, but that may be a blessing in disguise. I have many things to say about this game, and unfortunately they're mostly negative. I may be to blame for a large portion of it, but let's talk about it, and I hope I don't sour the experience for others. I know some people become fans of a franchise and want to go back in time to experience the originals, so I hope I don't take away that desire. My initial experience with the game was odd, to say the least. I installed the game, fired it up, and found it to be very easy to start up via GOG. It ran well, no problems with any parts of the game. Except one. The UI was so small it was hard to see anything around, and all the buttons and writings were very small. Way too small. So I played up to a point where I was stuck because I had a hard time clicking on objects and identifying objects in the environment. I then decided to change the game's resolution or try to make the UI bigger. I knew the second option was unlikely, as this game was made in a time where screens were a 3:4 aspect ratio and screen resolution was around 640 by 480. So I started looking around and didn't find a prompt solution. I did find the game's options, which allowed me to simply reduce the screen resolution, but not long after, I ran into two issues. The first was that in lower resolutions the keyboard simply did not work except for the escape key. I couldn't even enter my name in the character creation screen. And then there was a graphical glitch. Anytime I was on the options menu or on the large map menu, there was a small replica of the window just hanging on a corner of my screen. At first, it wasn't a huge problem. I could move the map around and I could ignore the replica. I kept on going until I came across a real problem created by the replica. I couldn't read my quest journal. The replica covered the first words of the quests and I couldn't move the menu around, so I had to fix that. I had to uninstall, reboot, install, reboot, launch the game, and finally got it working properly again. Once I had that settled, it was time to create my character, and it is a short list of how to create the character. Once the game was installed, it was time to create my character, and it was a short process. You are, as expected, given the option to create a pre-made character by choosing either warrior, mage, or survivalist, which is actually just the rogue class. Just call it rogue, why embellish it? After you set your abilities, there is the initial skill tree, which can be different from pre-made abilities. You can have an initial skill tree from wizard, even though you chose a warrior set, or you can move the initial options around and make your own set of ability scores, which is what I made. After a few quick runs to get a feel for the game, I decided that I would be building a warrior, because I am nothing if not a basic adventurer, setting my attributes to be balanced rather than strength-focused, and set the initial skills to warrior. The second character, the Chaos Knight, is also customizable, though I did get him a full warrior package with a focus on strength and initial warrior skills. Then I set off for adventure. But an initial headache of getting the game up and running was just one. There was another. The game itself. I don't know how popular this game is, but I do remember seeing a meme about it. The game where you can move crates around. And they were not joking. There are so many things hidden behind those stupid crates, it's not even funny. Another issue was that the character development was a bit obscure. The game itself was not self-explanatory, and at a certain point, one of the game loading screens told me to read the manual for more detailed information. Luckily, GOG provides the manuals when possible, so I downloaded it and started reading. Now, it was one thing having the booklet and reading it in your own downtime or when I sat in my backyard under the sun to get some fresh air. But having to sit in front of my screen to read the manual was a bit boring and deflating. Along with the manual, GOG also offers the official strategy guide. And honestly, I started using it to get things done. Mostly because if you don't save constantly, you will get killed. Controlling the two characters is not very intuitive, and the AI in aggressive mode is way too aggressive, making it so many times the inactive character would run around killing enemies and racking up damage. Which takes me to another issue, combat itself. It is straightforward, at least. Click the enemy, get to hacking. You can equip a variety of weapons, ranged, melee, and magical. Characters get into position and start swinging and shooting. Enemies will choose a target and magnetize their victim. If you are too low level, a couple of whacks and you go down. And here's the catch. The story of the game starts with you in a prison and the Chaos Knight, who should be a villain, frees you because a demon has bound your soul to that of the Chaos Knight, forcing the two of you to work together. But whatever happens to one, happens to the other. So if any of the two characters is taken down, it's game over. And that can happen very quickly because during combat, there is little to no indication that you are taking damage or that you are low on health. As you fight, there are floating information telling if you hit or missed and how much damage. But in melee encounters, it is difficult to differentiate your hits and the enemy hits, just like that previous sentence was confusing about who is attacking and who is receiving damage. So, more often than not, as I was trying to coordinate my two fighters, one would get their health drained and die, ending the adventure then and there. Combat is really hard. It did get easier once I got fully kitted with armor and decent weapons, but it was still a crapshoot sometimes. I could never be too careful about the health, and there was another issue with that. With the wide screen and the small UI, the character information is on the top corner, and as far as I know, it cannot be moved. So it's far from the action, and the size is minuscule. So it can be hard to gauge when to pop a potion at the correct time, not to waste them. It's a mess. So with all these headaches in place, I also decided to take this one room at a time and one level at a time. I would read the official guide, take notes, get back into the game, save after clearing every single room or corridor, and would often keep track of my health. With all that running well, it was time to start leveling my characters. After a few minutes playing, I was killed by a ghost in one shot. The thing was hitting too hard for my health, so I used up a few character points to improve health and went back in, quickly defeating it. Which brings me to leveling. Bit of a mess. As with any RPG, you gain experience, you level up, you use up the character points and set skills. But Beyond Divinity has an odd system. You get 5 points per level to improve your character abilities or attributes, like strength, intelligence, dexterity, and so on, and 1 skill point. The attributes are fine enough, quite easy to understand. The skills, not so much. You should have an idea of what kind of character you want to have as you go along, and try to stick to it as much as possible. But what each skill does is not clear, and there are so many skills. Throughout the game, you will meet friendly NPCs who sometimes can teach you a new skill in exchange for payment, and you can learn all of them. But I guess that would take a lot of money. So I was definitely trying to avoid learning more skills than I needed for my intentions. But that was also not so simple to do, because you sometimes find skill books, but nowhere tells you what you will learn from the book. You only learn after the fact. So you get 1 skill point per level, and you can use it on the skill you want. To a point. Each skill is limited to the level you have learned either via book or NPC. So, if you learn Identify 2, you can only reach level 2 in Identify. In this case, it becomes an issue, because depending on the equipment you need to identify, it requires a specific level of the skill Identify. You can identify items at shops as well, but that costs gold, which is not that hard to get, honestly. Anyways, the skills can become confusing, and it was at that point that the game's suggestion of reading the manual was actually helpful. But I never got around to doing that for real. I started reading it and then decided it was too much work for something that is meant to be fun. But hey, that's what comes with older games. You have to read the manual to understand the mechanics properly, including the skills themselves. And so, it was with a heavy heart that I decided to drop Beyond Divinity. At this point, I was too stressed about playing the game. I could say that it was because I was pressuring myself into playing it for this video, but truth be told, RPG games are hard to make fun and catchy, and Beyond Divinity is not that. I loved Baldur's Gate 1 and 2, even if those games kicked my ass so hard I never actually finished them. But this is way too much for my pea-brain. I may come back to it once I calm down and let it simmer a bit, but as a first impression, not good. I haven't played the newer Divinity games, but they look like they are incredible, so I will not judge the whole series based on one example. So that's it. If you're curious and patient, have the time to read the manual, and don't mind a slower-paced gaming to get positive results, then yes, play this game. But if you are more accustomed to turn-based RPGs, or even with more streamlined RPGs, maybe this is not for you. Join me next time when I fight monsters, get in bed with sexy mages, and drink potions to help in fighting in this action RPG that was a huge hit and still is to this day. See you next time.
Oh, you are awake, finally! Do not shrink from me, human! I hear your fear. I thought Samuel had robbed me of speech forever, but it seems this curse allows us to read each other's thoughts. Your fragile body has endured much pain, but you have shown great strength. You wouldn't have been Fergus's first victim, nor his last, I'll wager. But if you had fallen, the curse would have killed us both.